and welcome to the Goldenrod Podcast. I'm Ben. As always, I'm joined by fellow Pokemon enthusiast Conor to bring you some of the latest and greatest Pokemon news and a few laughs along the way. This week, we're discussing an alternative timeline where Game Freak introduced no new gimmicks and what it would mean for the Pokemon mainline games. We're also ranking every Pokemon starter and giving you our thoughts on how we would improve them in Legends Z to A. As always, you can jump to a topic using the timestamps in the description below. Conor, we are getting ever closer to that 100th episode.
What is this, 98?
This is 98.
Okay.
We are.
We've still got a little bit of time. Have we decided what we're doing for it yet?
We came up with an idea, and we might as well float it now, actually, considering no one's come out with any other ideas. We thought, and this was something we discussed a long time ago, that we just do something a little bit silly of, we both have like a Pokemon spinner. We both choose, we get a Pokemon, and then we have to debate which of those Pokemon would win in a fight.
Does it have to be Pokemon, or can we just do like Pokemon trainers? Just like...
Oh, yeah, let's do trainers. That's even better.
Who would win, Lieutenant Surge or Brock?
I love that idea. Yeah, let's do it. Well, Lieutenant Surge just fought in wars,
Yeah, well, supposedly. But Brock raised, 8 siblings on his own?
Yeah. And siblings fight. He's got some experience there. Siblings fight. They just know they do.
That's it.
So I think that's what we're doing then, isn't it?
All right, let's do it. That sounds like an episode.
Oh, I can't wait to see Bugsy fight against Bruno. Just see how that goes down. Snap him like an insect. We are so close. It's actually a little bit. Yeah. What's
daunting?
The word I'm looking for? Not just. How was it like? That's nearly 2 years. I mean, with the odd episode that we've missed, we've been doing this for 2 years now.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
But it doesn't feel like it, does it?
No, but think about it. What if we had come out in that time? Legends Arceus, Scarlet and Violet. Oh, BDSP. Were we around when BDSP came out? I can't remember if we did the BDSP launch.
I'm not sure if we did, without logging in and checking, I don't know, but it's crazy to think that we are. This is what it's going to be for us now moving forward. Is we are going to be in the hype cycle from beginning to end for any future Pokemon games. For better or worse, it's going to be exciting to be on that journey. In fact, Scarlet and Violet, we were there from the start, weren't we? Scarlet and Violet
because we overhyped it massively.
I
know I did anyway.
Oh dear. Let's jump into the first question this week, courtesy of Luis, who says, how would you feel if they brought back the raid mechanic from Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet, but for megas, i.e. you enter a mega raid den, and with 3 other people, you have to take down a mega Pokemon, perhaps being required to mega evolve in order to take them down. So what I've kind of got from there is it's almost what we've got with Scarlet and Violet, except for instead of terastalizing, you have to mega evolve your Pokemon to give it that extra damage boost, that damage output, in order to take down the raid den, which would be a mega Pokemon.
Yes, I will say, so the shield mechanic that they have, I think kind of worked better in the Dynamax raid dens, because you knew full well that it's like, okay, one person here can Dynamax, and then they're going to do a massive amount of damage, but the rest of us can still affect it. Whereas now when you put the shield up, it's like, well, we've all got a Terastalizer, nobody's doing anything.
Yep. And it works badly if you're not online, because none of the NPCs can terrestrialize. So it's either you take it down or nobody's taking it down.
That was the same in the Dynamax raid dens, though, was none of your allies would Dynamax. You had to be the one to do it, so you had to wait till your turn.
So so the NPCs wouldn't Dynamax, but it didn't feel as broken, and this is part of the issue.
Well, again, because you were missing out on 3 turns of not being Dynamaxed, versus many, many turns of many Pokemon being terastalized. And I think, the worst implementation we got was Stellar Form Terapagos. That shield mechanic was horrendous. Where you basically had to terastalize you had to terastalize in order to do any damage to it, but as soon as you terastalized it, it was super effective against you.
Forgot about that.
Yeah, so you terastalized, you got one hit in, did a load of damage, and then you got taken out.
Ooh, okay.
So
we don't want to repeat to that.
Not that, no. I like the raid mechanic. I like the idea of raids. I love the idea of them bringing it into Megas, making Megas this kind of super powerful thing of like, no, it takes a whole team of Pokemon to take this down. But I still think there needs to be some level of you don't get to Mega until a certain point. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a couple of ways they could potentially play this, I think. I think that there's almost... What I quite like the idea of is almost you go down into the raid den and the battle is split into 3 phases. The first phase is almost the setup phase where it's your 4 Pokemon versus a Pokemon that is capable of Mega Evolution. So it's not Mega Evolved at this point. So this is almost the, okay, let's get up your swords dances, let's try and weaken it, let's try and paralyze it, whatever it is. You almost have, I don't know, if they want to stick with Scarlet and Violet, you could have a 60-second timer on that. If you want to go back to Sword and Shield, it's almost every Pokemon gets 3 turns. Something like that. It's your setup phase, which then impacts the following phase where it's the opponent Mega Evolves, and you're now on the back foot at this point. It's not so much about being able to beat it, it's about A, surviving, and B, chipping away at it. It's about, okay, can we hold on long enough to enter the final phase of the battle where your Pokemon can then Mega Evolve, which allows you to then almost one-up your opponent, and then you've used the 2 previous phases to set up, and you're now ready to go on the offensive. I think that doing it that way allows other Pokemon to shine. So you might bring a Pokemon to that first, the first 2 phases that can't Mega Evolve, but it can still support your allies. I'm thinking of Pokemon with Life Dew, for example, or Wide Guard, or those kind of moves where it allows them to shine. I think that the other benefit of doing it this way is I forgot it now. I had another idea.
So
to my tongue.
Just to clarify, you're talking about being able to bring multiple Pokemon to the raids.
So I'm saying that every trainer brings 1 Pokemon, but it's that 4v1.
Okay, so you've got somebody in there that's very good at phase 1. You've got somebody in there that's very good at phase 2. You've got somebody in there specifically for the Mega Evolution at the end.
Yeah.
I think random matchmaking would be difficult. But that being said, random matchmaking has always been difficult.
Yeah, and there are ways around this. Like, they've done it before in... I've seen it in Final Fantasy XIV when I had a quick go of that a long time ago, where, again, it's got that kind of raid mechanic. It's, okay, you need 4 players to do this. And then there are almost slots. So the first slot is tank. So you would go, I want to be a tank. And your character would fill that slot. There's nothing stopping you from doing it this way and just giving them arbitrary... things like, you need a healer, you need a mega, you need a tank,
if we're gonna do raids, make it feel like a raid.
Yeah, exactly. And then that way you can go, okay, well, this Pokemon that I'm setting up, I want it to be the setup mod. So then when you are joining and you're building this party almost, you can go, okay, I'm gonna fill the tank slot. And at least you as a player hopefully we'll be able to go, okay, I know that we need 4 players to fit in these particular roles, and we've got them. Therefore, I know what position I need to play in. The problem with Scarlet and Violet at the moment is you just kind of, I'm joining with this Pokemon, and you see that they've joined with a Mewtwo, for example. You don't know if that Mewtwo is how that Mewtwo's been built up. Is it offensive powerhouse? Has it got recovery moves? What's its EV spread? You don't know these things. At least with the version we're talking about, you at least before you've even started the battle have an indication of whether or not you have a chance.
Yeah, you're talking about sort of similar to Unite. It's like I call jungle.
Yeah.
My other thought on this as well is that if we're going to do mega raids, we do run into a little bit of a problem where Dynamax raids and Terrestrial raids worked where mega raids might not. And you know why?
Why? Go on.
Limited roster. There's only so many Pokemon that Mega Evolve, whereas every Pokemon could Dynamax, every Pokemon could Terastalize. So you could have basically every single Pokemon available in a raid den. Whereas if we're doing Mega Pokemon, that's not necessarily going to be the case.
How many
Unless we do some form of Pokemon who can't necessarily Mega Evolve can still be filled with Mega Energy and just get boosts across the board.
Yeah, you could do it that way. I mean, I think one of the good things about if they went down that mega raid version is the fact that it fixes one of the issues we've had before about how do you keep people coming back to the game? Like terastalisation Pokemon, and this starter is currently is now available. It's like, okay, so what? Whereas with if they offered megas via the raid den, they can, and I hate this, is they can almost lock some of that content of, okay, you want this mega Pokemon. Well, it doesn't matter if you've transferred Charizard from a previous game, you haven't beaten the Charizard raid den, therefore you don't have access to a mega Charizard yet. It's a way for them to have that content of, okay, we need a way to keep players coming back to this game until either DLC comes out or until the next generation or the next remake is done. What do we do? Well, every month there's a new mega Pokemon, and they cycle between currently existing mega Pokemon that we know of, such as Mega Slowbro, but we can't access them. And then they bring out new mega Pokemon as time goes on. Okay,
I could see that working. Other thing as well, if we're talking about raid dens, and especially if we're doing raid dens where it's like new release Pokemon, what they very often do is make those the 7-star raids, which are the kind of ones where you have to play with other people. And I would really like Legends Arceus or the Legends series to stay a game that I can be on my own. I can complete everything on my own, which means that the AI that plays with you has to be good. And if the AI is that good, as we've seen, it often means that you don't have to be, because they'll just play for you.
Yeah, they overcompensate. It seems. And there is definitely... I personally would prefer the raid mechanic to stay out of my Legends game. Personally. But the fact that they've done it for the 2 previous generations makes me think that Game Freak are thinking that it has legs. Like the raid mechanic is, we're going to talk about this in a little bit about, the gimmicks that we've had. And, for the most part, Game Freak will, whenever they add some kind of gimmick, they then take it away. Whereas the raid mechanic, they've kept around. They've tweaked it, but they've kept the core version of that around. So it's going to be interesting to see whether or not it is just a mainline game, like every generation we get an update, a change, whatever, or whether or not it will be in Legends.
I have an alternate idea as well.
Okay.
So, given that it's the Legends series, you can play online, you can play with your friends, or you can just 4-on-1 this Pokemon. We go back to turn order. Yeah. We go back to turn order. We can't do this everyone plays at the same time thing, but we've now got the Legends turn order. So we're swapping up, and it's changed, and it's it's active, and you just play all 4 Pokemon.
I like that idea, because as a trainer, you have 6 Pokemon. That's been a main staple of the Pokemon series since the very beginning. And other than, was it Black and White, where you could have rotation battles where it's 3-on-3? There's been no way to kind of, outside of double battles, having multiple of your party work together. We've never had 4 of your team in a battle together at once.
No, whereas we've already got it in the Legend series of other trainers will just use multiple Pokemon at once. There's no rules here.
Yeah, it's just a free
And I like the idea that no, it's a mega Pokemon. It's that strong that you need to team up against it.
I like that. And what I really do like about that is it removes some of the frustration with the raid mechanics of either you partner up with NPCs who typically aren't built for the high level raids, or you partner with randoms, and when you partner with randoms, you don't know what you're getting unless you obviously unless you obviously communicate with people outside of the game to build up a team to win. This gets around that because you can just go, well, I've beaten all the mainline content. I now need some kind of post-game challenge. The raid mechanic gives me that. I'm going to go out of my way to capture the 4 Pokemon that I think are going to give me the best chance of beating this raid boss. And, ties into one of those, I think, it fixes one of the issues with Pokemon games of, 90% of new Pokemon every generation, you catch, you evolve, you box, you don't use them again. This would allow, Game Freak to have a little bit of micromanagement of, okay, this is the new raid boss that's coming out. These are the new Pokemon or existing Pokemon that we think is going to give you the best options. We're not going to give you the answers, but the answers are in the game for you. And it rewards you for, just throwing out a Pokemon off the top of my head, Cottony. I've never used Cottony. I've caught it, I've boxed it, Whimsicott. They could go, okay, Whimsicott has certain movesets and abilities that allow you to set up against this raid. And again, gets you to use Pokemon that you typically wouldn't use, which I'm all for.
Yeah, and it means you can still have that meta, the same as you do with 7-star raids at the moment, where it's a case of like, these are the top 5 Pokemon. If you don't bring these Pokemon, you're not going to win. But it also means that, well, no, these are the top 5 Pokemon, but they're also within roles. So what you really want to do is actually get in with friends. So it's like, okay, I'll build this one, you build that one, you build that one, you build that one. Now we're good to go as a team. Or you just go, I'll just invest the time and do it myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or you take your chance on randoms and you force your way through it, which is also totally possible.
It's a way to please everyone. It feels like that way. And we haven't done anything that breaks the core functionality of raid mechanics. All we've done is what Game Freak have done of, okay, how do we innovate on the previous version? And we've just done exactly that. And again, it's not like we've reinvented the wheel. We've taken mechanics from other online, raid mechanic games and brought it into Pokemon. Like, it feels like a win-win all around, right?
Yeah. And I, as I say, I still think you could get away with saying there's some kind of like non-mega form, mega energy influx. It's you just go with the alpha Pokemon plus the enrage stat effectively, because a lot of the 7-star raids, they're not special. Like, they have a different terraform than their normal, so you got to play around it a little bit, but it's still the same Pokemon with the same stats. It's just got most of its IVs and stuff set correctly. So we can do that where you basically go, right, well, it's got IVs and EVs, and we've also given it a buff to its highest. You give it Beast Boost, effectively. Give it a buff to its highest stat. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm okay with them not having to be megas. And like you say, you just, from a visual perspective, you just give it an aura, maybe change its eye color. Like, what more do you need to do? It's almost that kind. You could even like add a bit of lore to it of, this Pokemon is on the verge of mega evolution. And you could almost use that as a hint for the future of, okay, what Pokemon are going to return with megas at some point.
Yeah, I like it.
There's a lot of options there. We've also got another question, but before we do that, I just want to say, if you have got a comment or a question, you can reach us by leaving a comment on our podcast on YouTube, by emailing goldenrodpod@gmail.com, by leaving it on our Discord channel, or using the hashtag goldenrodpod on Twitter. By the way, when I was saying that, did you think it sounded like I was going to jump into an ad break?
I did a little bit, yeah. This episode is sponsored by no one.
No one yet. I'll tell you what, though, we have had a comment question courtesy of Tony, who has asked a what if question. How do you think the Pokemon franchise would have looked like had there been no gimmicks introduced post Generation 5? So no Megas, Z moves, Dynamax, G-Max, or terastalisation. Paint the pictures, boys.
So we got to go back to Gen 6 now, because that's where these gimmicks first started. Now, to paint the picture of where we were at, Pokemon Go had really just come out, and was still in the hype season. Pokemon was moving to 3D for the very first time. And then we also had a celebration of Gen 1, had a lot of nods to nostalgia with the Mega Pokemon. So that's what we're losing, is that nostalgia hit for a lot of people. You could still technically have Professor Sycamore give you like the original Kanto trio. I don't think it would have hit as well if they didn't have new forms on the end of it. You know, again, we have Pokemon Origins to celebrate that kind of time period, which finished off in Mega Evolution. So much of that era, and so much, I think, of the rekindled interest in Pokemon around that time came from Megas. Granted, a lot of it was Pokemon Go, but I think what brought people back to the games was the Megas, not necessarily just, oh, it's 3D now. So I think we wouldn't have seen such a pickup of the Pokemon mainline game that we saw. That being said, we also wouldn't have seen them try and replicate and fumble a lot of the times with the follow-up gimmicks.
Yes. So I think you're absolutely right to start with X and Y, and you've hit the nail on the head that, you know, I wasn't at the place I am now with my consuming Pokemon content when X and Y came out. Okay, I came to X and Y late. However, I have seen enough of the trailers to know that they went hard on, remember these Gen 1 Pokemon? We've got some Megas for them, and showing off Mega Blastoise, Mega Venus, Charizard. Saying all that, though, do we think that X and Y would have still landed well because of it's the first Pokemon game on, 3D? And I know I'm discounting some of the spin-offs, but it's the first mainline Pokemon game on 3D. Do we think that is strong enough to almost carry that? And the reason I ask that is because that's almost that linchpin of, let's say we're doing a what if. This is that pivot point. Like, what happens following X and Y? Is it as well received?
Okay, no, I don't think X and Y being 3D sells it as much as Megas do. On the contrary, I think Sword and Shield being the first console Pokemon game sold it much more than Dynamax did.
Yes. Yeah, we've almost got an opposite there, haven't we?
So,
okay.
Yeah, Megas, I think, were very much necessary for the franchise to breathe some life into this thing that people had very much stepped away from, and they breathed the life into most of the nostalgia that they have for it. Now, that being said, could we have seen... Okay, if, for instance, instead of us getting Mega Venusaur, Blastoise, and Charizard, those evolutions were alternate final forms, similar to what we have in Legends. Okay? Aerodactyl, we just got an evolution for Aerodactyl. Diancie just had an alternate form that you needed an item to unlock, similar to like Gracious Orb and Giratina. A lot of them could have just been extra evolutions or alternate forms or alternate evolution pathways. Would we have seen that work as well as Megas? Because you're still tickling that itch of like, oh, it's my nostalgia, and they've changed up some of the Pokemon that I like. Go on, I'll let you talk on it before I come back and argue with myself.
No, I think you have hit the nail on the head there. That you can say Mega Evolution is, what reinvigorated, some people and got them back into Pokemon, as it did with us. But Mega, it doesn't matter what name you want to give to that. The key thing there was, remember these Generation 1 Pokemon that you grew up with? Well, he's an alternative form. And while, a divergent evolution isn't as flashy as Mega Evolution, it still scratches that itch of, I wonder what they're doing with Generation 1 Pokemon. I wonder what they're doing with those old, those early generation Pokemon that I grew up and I loved. And I think they can still do the marketing they need to get people back into it. And I think that actually thinking about it, out of all of this almost what if divergent timeline, X and Y is the easy one to solve, because it is just a case of, well, if you just change the, from Mega Evolution to Divergent to Final to Extra Evolution, whatever it might be, for the most part, that game stays the same, right?
Counterpoint.
Okay.
The Mega Evolution allows you to have your cake and eat it. There's a new form for Charizard, but Charizard is untouched. It's still Charizard as you know it. You still love Charizard. Charizard's great. But there's also new Charizard if you want it. Whereas if you suddenly start going, no, this is Charmeleon's new evolution, this is new Charizard, it's like, well, I like old Charizard. Where's my old Charizard? Oh, well, you have to get that from a different region.
And I've just had another point as well, because I was thinking we're talking about the gimmicks. Are we saying then that regional forms aren't gimmicks because they were introduced from Gen 7 onwards, right? Gen 6 didn't have any regional forms.
Oh, that's such an interesting one. Okay, so I don't think regional forms are gimmicks, and the reason I don't think they're gimmicks is because they've stuck around.
Yes, no, you're absolutely right there.
Gimmicks have to be something that was introduced, changed up gameplay, and then was taken away.
Okay.
So we're talking about Megas, Z moves, Dynamax, and terastalisation. Those are the gimmicks. Yep. Okay. I don't think split evolution, extra evolution, you're right, we didn't get the divergent forms or the regional forms until Gen 7. But they have stuck around since, and every game has had them.
So if we arrived on this what if, if the removal of gimmicks literally just makes Game Freak pull regional forms forward one generation to give that, it scratches that itch of, look at these older Pokemon, there's new versions of it in order to lure people back to Pokemon. And granted, I will admit that you are right that there is a difference between, these alternative regional or different evolutions compared to Mega, because Mega can be taken away because, like you say, it's a gimmick. But I think that, I'm happy to say we've arrived at the conclusion that X and Y, the change would be, it just pulls forward the regional forms one generation.
Yes. You do then obviously have the issue of how does it handle in competitive? Because let's not pretend like Megas didn't completely destroy the competitive scene.
Yes.
For a long time, especially once we got into Oras and Primal Reversion and Rayquaza can Mega Evolve without holding a stone and all that kind of stuff.
Busted.
So, yeah, it was horrendous. And then you also had Z moves on top of that. Like, the Gen 7 meta was crazy. If it was regional forms instead, we could never have reset that. We would still have those in the game. I don't think they'd have maybe been as powerful as the Megas were.
That's it, yeah.
So yeah, they wouldn't have necessarily been as game-breaking as the Megas were. Yeah, okay, so it wouldn't have been too bad. We would actually just have access to Pokemon that we still really enjoy.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not to say, every generation has these every recent generation from Gen 7 onwards has had these alternative forms of Pokemon that we love. And, credit to Game Freak, it's a way for them to go, these older Pokemon that maybe we got wrong the first time or didn't work out how we wanted to, we can bring life back into these Pokemon. I think it's a great bit of functionality that they did. I can't remember the point I was going to make with this. I'm going to keep rambling until I get back to it and I'll go full circle.
That's how I do it.
But I think it's the way it works, folks. But I think the key thing is that now I've lost it.
Okay, so you bring regional forms forward. So regional forms are introduced
Yes.
in Gen 6. I think that's a massive selling point. I think Gen 6 still does really well. We've now got 3D. We've got the nostalgia hit. Pokemon Go is still doing great. And now we got regional forms. Cool. We're now losing something from Gen 7. So Gen 7, you're now losing Z moves. And you're losing the novelty of regional forms, which was like a big push that they made. What else is left that makes Gen 7 special? That it's not gyms, but it's kind of not gyms in name only.
I think. Okay, so what did we get in Generation 7 that oh no, I was just about to say the Ultra Wormholes at the end of the game. It's almost that, okay, you want all the legends? This is the game that you get all the legends in.
That wasn't until Ultra Sun and Moon.
Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. And we got that in Oras anyway. Oras allowed you to do the Hooper rings anyway. So we've actually just taken even more away from Gen 7. So how do they... Because,
But if they're not spending as much time coming up with all these different moves and all the animations and building the game around collecting Z crystals, we can just make the trials more fun.
Yeah.
We can actually make the trials more interesting and have it feel a little bit more impactful than I think it did in the end. Unfortunately, I enjoyed Sun and Moon as a playthrough, but I think after like the third trial or something, you end up just basically doing gyms.
Yeah, you do. You do, unfortunately. I maintain that they should have leaned more into, we don't want to do gyms. We're going to do this alternative thing. Either stick with it or don't bother with it. Instead of what we got, which is almost this
do a puzzle,
house.
fight a trainer, which is all a gym is.
Yeah, I think they should have leaned more into the totem Pokemon and
having you're right, totems. Because that's not a gimmick. That's an island. It's not a gimmick, really. Yeah,
I don't think it's a gimmick personally, and the reason why I don't think it's a gimmick is because it doesn't affect the meta, because it's during the single player only, and granted there are some totem Pokemon that you can unlock permanently that have boosted stats, but that's just a version of it's just a slight variant of the Pokemon that you've got. It's not a gimmick, I don't think, because it's not something that I don't know how to explain this. Is it a gimmick? Am I going back on myself now? I'm going totem Pokemon is a gimmick?
I don't know, because the thing is, if you say totem Pokemon isn't a gimmick, then you can basically still have Dynamax and just let opponents use it. Because let's face facts, you can't have the Eternatus fight without Dynamax. Because Eternatus made that fight. So you've still got to have that in there. All we're saying is you're now taking Dynamax away from the players, which is fine, because you now just go, well, you had totem Pokemon, which were very special Pokemon in Alola. And in Galar, there's these Dynamax raid dens where the Pokemon are massive. I think the anime suffers. The last season of Ash's anime suffers massively from not having the championship matches have the ability to use all the different gimmicks. It's a different world. It really is, because you start so far back, it branches so heavily.
I think then that Okay, right. You remove the gimmicks. Okay, so you taking out the gimmicks. So what is it that is getting players to continue to buy these games and go in on them, while also allowing you to affect the meta in some way? I honestly think that if you remove that, then the next step, the next way that they can accomplish all of them is by potentially switching up the battle system.
Which was what I was just thinking. Does agile and strong style count as a gimmick?
Oh, it's only available in one game. I guess we'll know more when Legends of Zelda A is released, but until then, we can only go on what we have right now. But I think I'm leaning towards Sun and Moon comes out and they go, okay, no gimmicks. We need to develop and grow the Pokemon games and improve them. I think we see some version of agile and strong style and a shake up of the battle mechanics brought forward to Gen 7. I don't see what else it has outside of potentially more totem Pokemon and more trials.
I mean, here's the alternate answer, and one I really hope we see in this alternate future is we take the gimmicks out, and Game Freak just have to make better games to compensate. We can't sell it on, oh, there's a new mechanic that you got to try. No, we just got to make the game better than the last one.
Exactly, which is why I went down that thought process of Gen 7 gets a revamped battle system. Because what else is there to kind of go, look at us developing and growing and changing up the game? So I think just to kind of plow, because we've still got Gen 8 and Gen 9 here, I think we go with they change up the battle system for Gen 7. Yeah? And then we go into Gen 8. Now, Gen 8, the one consistent is we go to the Nintendo's.
Yeah. That's a selling point in and of itself. Yes.
Now, I actually think that if you remove terastalisation from Gen 8,
no, Dynamax.
I don't think it Dynamax, from Gen 8. I don't think it impacts as much as the previous gimmicks of the previous generations.
No, I don't think it was a massive selling point.
I think Gen 8 stands on its own of it's on the Switch, DLC, and if we're going down this where we've come from Gen 6 of it's got a new battle system and we had regional forms earlier, which might mean that they've leaned more heavily into regional forms. I don't think
there is an issue. There is an issue.
Oh, okay.
You lose a lot of the feeling of Galar. Galar felt impressive because you had the massive stadiums to compensate for Dynamax. Now, I still think you can have the big stadiums, but I think if you're fighting tiny little Pokemon in there,
it's a bit.
It feels weird.
So, do you think we move back to a Gen 6 style, smaller gyms, smaller?
I think
we
Galar
go back to the
suffers
Elite
for
Four.
it. I think Galar
agree.
suffers for it massively. I would almost argue that you still go for the big football stadiums because it's Britain. We really like that, but you now need to compensate. Where we can't just make the Pokemon big. Let's up the animation. Let's make the animation of the fights really good.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I could see that.
So we're now on the Switch. That's a huge selling point, and the fights have never looked better.
Agreed. I just want to let the audience know, we aren't retroactively working our way to the conclusion, which I think we're getting to, where the quality is just better.
It's just a better game because they stopped wasting all their time on these gimmicks. But again, we are talking about a world where Game Freak aren't investing so much time into stuff that just gets taken out. So in theory, it's not impossible to think if they're just building on what came previously and making improvements on Gen 7, we got a bunch of moves that looked really good. Now we're saying, all right, we don't have that in Gen 7. So why in Gen 8 couldn't we have every move look really good? Yes, it would never happen. It wouldn't have happened. Like, let's face it, if Game Freak took the gimmicks out, the games would have been the exact same as they are now, just without the gimmicks. But that's a really boring conversation. So we're here.
So we're here. We're speculating on what could have been if Game Freak decided to use that time that they have, in making the games better in some way. So we got Gen 8. Okay, let's say, like you say, they've put more time, they've reused that time in order to improve the quality, the visuals, whatever it might be. I think actually one of the other things that we get as a result of this, do we not get Dexit? Do we get Sword and Shield has every single Pokemon because they haven't had to cut something to accommodate extra time for Dynamax and Gigantamax?
No, I think we still get it. I think we still get it because the argument for why Dexit occurred obviously was false. Yes. I think it was them going, we've got to pull this Band-Aid off at some point, and not every Pokemon game is going to have every Pokemon in it. We're going to do it now. We're gonna sell this game anyway. It's the first console game. Let's just do it. So yeah, I think that still happens. I think people are still enraged about it. I still don't think the graphics are all that great. I still think the trees look like garbage. But I think the animations are a bit better on the attacks. Blastoise shoots water out of its cannons, which we know is possible because by Scarlet and Violet, they've got that down.
It was actually first done in Pokemon Stadium.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Kid you not. Back in, I don't know, 1990 something or other. So we've done Gen 8. Let's jump into Gen 9, which I actually think terastalisation, if you rip terastalisation out of Generation 9, you have to upend so much of that game.
You think?
Well, it seems, maybe I'm misremembering this, but it seems to just be in there all the time.
See, I never
and
used
there's a lot. Sorry. So, not from a gameplay perspective, from a story and lore perspective, because it ties in so heavily with the core story compared to the others.
Okay.
Like Megas is better.
Right. You lose terastalisation. You've still got the Titan Pokemon.
Yes.
Okay. You've still got the herbs that you're looking for, so that's still fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Team Star, don't terastalise, so that's all still fine. And you can still do the Elite Four challenge just fine. You just take the gimmick away. The gimmick that I don't think was very well implemented anyway.
No, yeah.
And even the last storyline is you take terastalisation out, you make it more about the Paradox Pokemon. That's all you do.
Actually, you know what? No, you're right. It doesn't really impact the mainline game. It does have an impact to the DLC, but only the second piece. The first piece you've got Ogerpon, which has that raid mechanic.
Yep. So all you're losing is Terapicos, which, again, doesn't really use the terastalisation mechanic that we've had up till that point anyway. It has the stellar mechanic.
Yeah.
Now, I will say competitive suffers, because terastalisation did make competitive quite interesting and brought a load of different options to people and playing Pokemon in different ways. But it's not a very good spectator sport at the moment, which I've mentioned many times. I think Scarlet and Violet is a lot worse to watch than Sword and Shield was. Whereas I think if we've already got it where, well, actually we can keep the big stadiums because we've still got all the really cool animation and stuff like that. And I don't know. I don't think you can have... You could still maybe have stellar Pokemon. You could still have that part of the story. Similar to how I'm keeping Gigantamax for... I've forgotten his name.
Eternatus.
Eternatus, thank you. You still get Eternamax, Eternatus. You can still have it in raids. It's just not a thing that you get.
Yeah, that works.
You know, so you can still have stellar Pokemon that are infected with whatever's happening from Terapagos. You can still have raid dens where this Pokemon is affected differently. Once you take them out of there, they act normal.
Yeah, because it's one thing that we didn't discuss actually is so much of the, like, okay, if you rip out these gimmicks, what does that do for the multiplayer of Generation 8 and Generation 9? Because so much of that is built around the raid den. Are people as interested if you go into a raid den and... I was just about to say, what I was going to say is, are people going to be as interested if you go into these raid dens and you beat the battle and you get that Pokemon, but it isn't, like, you can't terrestrialize it?
Well,
okay.
we'll replace them with Totem Pokemon. We'll keep Totem Pokemon around.
Just stronger versions of
just stronger versions. Yeah.
That would actually make me more likely to get them rather than...
Yeah, because it's not the same Pokemon you already have.
Yeah. I think we've improved the multiplayer raid mechanic by just bringing, like, just carry Totem Pokemon, that kind of boosted Pokemon throughout. I'm more likely to get one of them than, it's a Pokemon that has a rare Terra raid, a Terra type. It's like, yeah, but you've given me the tools to change the Terra types anyway, so I really don't care if it's rare or not.
Yeah.
So
all you're doing is making the grinding less, which, again,
yeah,
I shouldn't have to grind so hard for Terra Crystals. That's kind of annoying.
It is, yes. So I think it's just to wrap this up, because we've been going out for like 25 minutes at this point. I think we arrived at the conclusion that ripping out the gimmick features, it leads to some changes, but it doesn't completely change Pokemon as a franchise. We're pretty much where we would be anyway. It's just that the gimmicks are implemented in different ways with different names.
Yeah, I think so. I think it becomes more of like a boss battle gimmick. So
yes,
realistically, along the same levels as like the Ultra Necrozma fight. You have, and that I think sticks with me more because we barely talked about Z moves because nobody cares.
No one cares. No
one cares about Z moves. Sure, Ash doing it in the anime, and as I say, I think the anime suffers more than anything else. Because Z moves look amazing in the anime. I think Megas was a cool touch point within the anime. You don't get Ash Greninja. Maybe you do. Maybe you don't. Maybe you still do. I think the anime suffers more than the games do, because I don't think the gimmicks were ever implemented very well in the games. I don't think they offered a hard enough boss fight most of the time. And I know when I played through, very often, I stopped clicking the button.
Yeah.
I very rarely used Dynamax. Actually, Dynamax I did more so, because Dynamax, again, limited the amount of times you could do it. So it was a cool thing to pull out for 3 turns during a gym fight.
Agreed, yes.
But I don't necessarily know if I'd have liked to have that over just all fights looking better.
Oh, right. We're going to have to wrap this up because we're going for so long. And honestly, if I go down that rabbit hole, that question, that prompt, I don't think we're getting to this ranking the starters, okay? No. I really don't. So thank you very much, Tony, for the question. It was great just to go down that rabbit hole. It'd be interesting to see if, eventually we could maybe do one where we change something in Generation 1. I just
like, what if Pokemon had always been double battles? Something silly like that.
Yeah, definitely. Let's move on to the main topic this week then of breaking down or ranking each one of the starters. and then making a decision on how we would improve them for Pokemon Legends ZA. So I'm sure Conor is going to throw something up for our visual viewers over on YouTube. Audio listeners, will do our best to kind of run this through with you so we can, even if you can't see it, we can at least talk you through where we're ranking each of these. So we have the final evolution of every single starter Pokemon, including the Hisuian regional variants as well. And we have a typical tier list of S, A, B, C, D. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. And we're going to go...
Just to clarify as well, we're not going to say how we'd improve every single starter Pokemon.
No.
Because I think if they're in B and above, we're pretty happy with them.
But yeah, they're fine. They're good.
They're fine. So we're basically saying, like, anyone that's in C, anyone that's in D, probably deserve to be in Legends Arceus and have an alternate form, Mega Evolution, some kind of change to them.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, with that, should we get started with Venusaur?
I mean, it's really hard with the Kanto starters not to at least put them all in A at least.
I agree, only because they've already had their time to shine. Charizard multiple times. I think, yeah, just whack them all in A. And the reason I'm going with A is because if I go hard on my nostalgia, I would happily move them to S. But I don't want to. I'm happy to just kind of leave those starters where they are. For the
I mean, they are all awesome. The fact that they've had other forms and stuff in the past proves that, they could all do with some improvement.
Yeah, agreed.
Not that I necessarily think that all the forms they've had improve them, necessarily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
yes,
there you go.
Agreed. So, Meganium. Now, my mascot on my YouTube channel. I'm going to, I think, go back in time is the only way I can do this, because I have to think about this Pokemon before I started YouTube and content creation. And Meganium, I don't even think would hit B tier, because I just don't think it leans hard enough into the visual elements that it has. Like, the antennae aren't great. The leaves that it's got are probably the most striking feature about it. But if you remove those leaves, what have you got? A long-necked dinosaur? It's really not got a lot going for it. I personally don't think. Its typing is also really boring.
Yeah, I think Meganium suffers because its previous two evolutions are better than it. I would happily take Bayleaf or Chikorita over Meganium, which shouldn't be the case. Like, you can say maybe the first form star, but never the second form. So I think it's in C tier, really. And I say that because I almost think it deserves more love than it gets.
Agreed.
I think it needs a little bit of something to elevate it.
Yep, agreed. And that, for me, is something as simple as a slight variation on its design and a secondary typing. I think that it is this close to easily jumping up a tier or two just from a couple of, tweaks.
But we'll come on to that and why we should in a minute. Typhlosion.
Again, are we... because Typhlosion has had an alternative form.
So it has. I think Typhlosion's good. Agreed. I think Typhlosion is almost the quintessential good tier Pokemon. It's got a cool design.
Yes.
We like the flames coming out of it. It's not overly exciting, but I enjoy it. It's good.
Yeah, and I think it suffers a little bit from... After Charizard, they almost had to go, oh, okay, we always have to take a step down in okay, we're not going to be able to create something as exciting as Charizard as early on in the the creation of Pokemon. So what do we go for? Okay, let's take something that, like you say, is just middle of the road. It won't annoy people, but it's not going to excite people. It's something just that baseline almost of it's not great, it's not terrible, it's just good. Yep. Which is exactly where it goes. Be good.
And I kind of think the same for Feraligatr, which is a shame because Totodile is my favorite starter.
Agreed.
But I think Totodile is amazing. I would put Totodile in S tier.
Agreed.
I would put
yes.
Croconaw in D. I hate Croconaw.
Oh,
I
do you? Okay.
I despise its whole caveman design. I don't know what it's doing, and I don't get along with it. And then I think Feraligatr comes back a bit, but it's kind of also just a crocodile.
Agreed. I think that both Feraligatr and Croconaw suffer because it's almost like they're not on the same page. Does that make sense? Like, it's either you go Croconaw and go, right, Feraligatr has more of this animalistic, prehistoric caveman style, or you strip out that from Croconaw and just, like, have it just be naked, for lack of a better word. Croconaw, it's... Both of them suffer because it's almost like they were designed by two separate people and then at the end just thrown together and gone, okay, we'll just throw them in.
Yeah, there's no through line to the evolution.
No, I actually, based on that, I actually would put Feraligatr alongside Meganium because I think there's more that can be done with it.
Yeah. I'm gonna again, I love this evolution line. I really do. But I think we're talking mostly design-wise and what it can do for you. And I think all three of those starters suffer by being monotypes.
Agreed.
Feraligatr gets a little bit better getting Ice Fang and Heart Gold. That's very cool. But yeah, it does need a little something. A tweak to the design, a tweak to the typing, just to give it a leg up.
Agreed.
Sceptile.
Already has a Mega Evolution.
Almost arguably a Mega Evolution that makes it worse. I mean, the Dragon typing's cool. I don't think it needed it.
No, I don't. And Dragon's a really weird typing for it. I don't quite understand that decision. But from a design perspective, I love Mega Sceptile. Mega Sceptile is phenomenal. But Sceptile, I think, while I think it's the weakest design of the three and that I think the weakest typings because it is a monotone typing, I still maintain that it is good. It's a bit like Typhlosion of that generation. It's just good.
See, now I'd argue this is already awesome. Now,
okay,
I think basically the Hoenn trio are some of the strongest.
Yes.
Outside of maybe Gen 4, just a little spoiler, I think they are some of the strongest. I agree with you. Sceptile is the weakest of that. And I'll tell you why I think Sceptile is the weakest of that, because it falls under that same Meganium trap of its previous evolution was cooler. I think Grovyle is much cooler than Sceptile. And I think it suffers for that. I would still say it's awesome, though.
Okay. I'm happy with that. Throw it into the A tier.
Okay. Blaziken, the original firefighting Pokemon.
This, for me, is S tier for a couple of reasons. One, I think it does have a really strong design. It has that follow through, like, you know, the issue with Feraligatr that we mentioned. Torchic to I always forget the second one. Combuskin to Blaziken. It just flows naturally. I think firefighting, I don't think we'd had that typing at that point, so it was unique. And then what did they go and do to it in Oras? They give it a Mega Evolution, which just elevates its typing even more. For me, it's S tier. I just don't see how you would improve that, or why would you even want to improve that?
Yeah, I'm not going to fight you on that one. Similarly, I hope you don't fight me on Swampert. Swampert is also S tier.
Agreed. Like, honestly,
again, water ground type, phenomenal typing. Hits incredibly hard, can basically get you through the game on its own, both through all the gyms and just like it learns the most HMs, so it's super useful in that way.
Yeah.
I love Swampert. I think its design is phenomenal. I think it's, if we're talking about the evolution design flow, I think it works. And Swampert, almost the opposite to Sceptile and Meganium, benefits from Marshtomp being so derpy.
Agreed. Yeah, it does. It really does. I love that design. And it's mega. We've not even mentioned it's mega. It's just, I love its mega. The fact that it becomes so beefy. And
I like that it takes it in a different direction.
Yes. Yeah. They didn't go with
I don't know if I prefer it. I think
Okay.
I'd still take original Swampert.
Okay.
But I like
mega,
the way they went with it.
Yes. Agreed.
Torterra.
Like
I said, these two generations are probably some of the strongest. I think Torterra is strong S tier.
I agree for a multitude of reasons. One is its typing. Grass and ground is a phenomenal offensive typing. A grass type that has access to Earthquake and Razor Leaf and other grass type moves can just hit like an absolute truck and also take a lot of damage. And its design is phenomenal. At first glance you could go, oh, it's quite similar to Venusaur. They've gone for that, four-legged, very, very heavy monstrosity. But the way they've designed it is, a tree growing out of its back, its hard shell. Great design. I absolutely love it.
Yep. Fantastic. We'll put this in S. Now that we're talking about these, it does feel a bit weird having all the Kanto Pokemon there, but we could sit here all day talking about how they're...
Yeah.
Do we just bump them up to S tier and just...
We can revisit it at the end if
yeah, okay. It doesn't matter. They're out of the running for need fixing, so it's fine.
Yes. Infernape.
Infernape. I think it's another strong S tier. I think it is. I think the design is so cool. They did a lot with it in the anime, which gave it a leg up. Granted, I will say they did a lot for it in the anime. It's another firefighting type, and they basically did the Charmander story again, but gave it a better payoff.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
it was another fire type Pokemon that got abandoned by its old trainer, but the old trainer ended up being Ash's rival, and they had such a cool. They had such a cool way of showing Blaze, because this was when they started like really implementing the abilities in the anime. It going basically Super Saiyan and just losing its mind in the fights.
Okay, I love that.
I think it's a very cool monkey.
I think it's also an S tier. I think it's a lower rung of S tier. I don't think it's as strong as the other ones, but maybe that is I dropped off on Generation 4. Mm-hmm. Although, no, saying that, because I maintain Empoleon and Torterra are really strong S tiers. So actually that my argument there doesn't hold weight. I think that the things that hold this Pokemon back are the reusing of firefighting, but I understand why they did it. Mm-hmm. So I'm okay with that. And I think that for me, and this is a purely visual thing, is it just feels too skinny for me. But saying that, they then go the complete opposite direction for Emble, which we'll go on to in a bit. Mm-hmm. I think you know what? The more I'm talking about it, the more I'm thinking they are just nitpicks. So yeah, S tier, fine.
Okay, Empoleon. You're clearly a big fan of Empoleon, so I'll let you talk first.
Okay, so again, water steel typing, something that we hadn't seen for a starter, especially considering potential for Blastoise to be retroactively made. An argument could be made. So the fact that we actually got that in this Pokemon, the fact that it looks so it's so unique in its design. They've done something that Game Freak don't get enough credit for. Of they could have just made a penguin. They could have just gone, it's a penguin. But they've adapted it to fit in with its steel typing. The fact that its headpiece is a trident that fits in with that water design is absolutely phenomenal. I think it's an S tier. I'm curious as to what you think. You despise it. How come?
Its design has never sat right with me. Yes, okay. I like what they've tried to do with the trident thing, but it's like replaced the beak. And I have an issue with bird Pokemon that don't have a strong beak. Similar to why I don't like Magmortar. It's got really, really tiny lips instead of a beak, and it shouldn't. He's also a bit on the porky side. Which, for what is supposed to be this jet that streaks its way through the water, I don't get it. Its blade arms, they're kind of a little bit more cumbersome than they should be. And his feet are a little bit off-putting. I don't know whether it's because they're so drastically different to the rest of the color of him or what's going on. Maybe I just don't like duck feet. Maybe just
against that. I can't hold this against you because you've basically done the opposite characteristics than I did with Infernape. In terms of, I said Infernape was too skinny. You're saying Empoleon's too bulky. I mean, if you had to take out the design elements and just talk about it as a Pokemon from typing, what do you think about that?
I think a Steel Water type has a lot of potential. I think it has a lot of potential as a very bulky Pokemon, which I don't think Empoleon plays into.
Okay. So they should have either streamlined it and gone with Water Steel, the design is focused around the speed of it, or they should have leaned more into the Water Steel typing. It ain't moving fast, but it's bulky as anything.
Yeah. It should have been a brick wall, and it's kind of not.
Okay. Where would you put this then?
Personally, I'd put it in not good.
Okay.
That's where I'd put it if you had to ask me. I think there's a lot of room for improvement with Empoleon. Simply because I like a lot of the elements. I think the execution on it isn't great.
Okay. So I personally would put it into either A or S tier. But the whole point of this is to kind of go, what Pokemon need more love and updates. Now, if you've got some ideas for Empoleon, I would happily see you put that in not good so we can discuss what your thoughts are around it.
Okay.
Yeah?
Right. The Gen 5 starters. Arguably some of the weakest.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, good. Glad.
I agree, yeah. So, this, out of every single Pokemon, other than possibly, I always forget what it's called, Quilladin, whatever it's called from Gen 6, this is the weakest Pokemon, I think, in is it Superior?
Yes, Superior.
And I know, folks, like, I know it has arms and it's just behind its back, okay? It hasn't fully regressed.
That doesn't make it better.
No, exactly, no. I think there's this design just does not work. We've spoken about that through line of Pokemon, from stage 1 to stage 3 evolution. This just doesn't flow for me. It feels like a regression. Considering its name as well, I don't quite understand why it's got that name outside, why that design lends itself to that name, other than the fact that it just seems a bit snooty of looking down its nose at you. It's pure grass type again. I just don't have any love from this Pokemon, not even from a nostalgia point of view. I think that even if I'd have played and loved Generation 5, I wouldn't have a lot of nostalgia for this Pokemon. It's just a meh starter.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I actually think for me, this is, I want to say it's our first D tier, very bottom of the rung.
I do think it's one of the weakest. And I know it has its fans out there, and you may be one of them, but this is our list. And therefore, it's 100% correct, and you're wrong.
It is, yeah, factually correct. Emboar. This is a Pokemon where we, for the third time, got Fire and Fighting.
And I think it's the first one that suffers for it.
Agreed. I think they would have done a lot better keeping its bulk and maybe taking design elements from something similar to Rhyperior. There's a lot of design similarities between them. I think this should have been our first Fire Rock starter.
I could see that.
Lean into the bulk. Lean into that kind of flaming rock element. you can still give it fighting type moves. I think that design still lends itself to fighting type moves, but I think you just change up the typing. And again, you'd give us something that we've not had before in a fire and rock Pokemon. We've had quad weaknesses before, and again, lends itself quite nicely to that. I think that Emboar, I can understand why people like this design opposed to Superior, but I still don't think it is a good design. I think this is on par with probably Feraligatr or Empoleon in terms of there's a lot of work that can be done here to improve it.
So my issues with Emboar are that the silhouette's kind of weak. He's kind of very stocky, and there's not a lot else going on. I love the flaming beard. If you've ever watched My Hero Academia, you can see how cool that can look on a bulky character. But then it's got the waistband with the swirls on it, and then he's got his trousers on, and he's got these armbands. There's a lot going on in this design, and none of it's really doing much to elevate it.
No, it feels like they had a lot of ideas, and rather than streamlining it, they just went, no, let's just make all these ideas work.
Yeah. And I think you're right, because it's got the fighting type, they've kind of gone, well, let's make it a kind of, like a wrestler. We'll give it a wrestling costume. And those are some of the weakest elements within its design. Whereas I think if you were to say, as you rightly say, give it maybe a rock type or the ground type, something like that, well, now we can add different elements in there. We can have... We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it when we come on to it.
Yeah. What that bad boy in C? You wax in C?
Oh, I
you want to wax in D?
I do. No. You can argue with me. You gave me Empoleon.
I don't care enough.
You gave me Empoleon, so it's fine.
Okay. Samurott.
I think it's the strongest one.
I agree. It's the strongest one. It's a strange one because
I think it suffers massively for not having a through line that makes any sense. I don't think two otters should evolve into this.
Yeah. No, agreed. Yes. And I think Duot should have been a bit like I'm trying to think of some of the other Pokemon that stay stood up and almost have weapons for. Well, they have weapons. Samurott just. It regresses, and I was about to say, oh, well, they improve Samurott with Hisuian Samurott, but that Hisuian Samurott still isn't. No, there isn't the direction I would have gone with that. I probably would have liked to have seen them try to replicate what I think they failed to do in Quilladin. Is it Quilladin? And they should have made him stay stood up.
Yeah, I'm going to look it up. I've forgotten it.
Forget. Chespin, Quilladin. Something about
it's something to do with the paladin anyway.
It's something to do with that. I think they should have leaned more heavily into the shells becomes Chestnut. That's the one. They should have leaned more heavily into the shells become some kind of weapon or a weapon or a shield or whatever.
It does pull swords out of its little sheaths on its arms. But yeah, you're right. I don't think that comes through in the design very well.
No, and the problem as well with it, I think, is it suffers from just being a pure water type when they could have gone so many places with that design. They could have gone for, majestic style dragon typing because of the long whiskers. They could have gone for something fighting because it's quite bulky and the weapons. They could have gone for something electric and gone... leaned into, some of the yellow visual elements. There's a lot they could have loved done with this.
Because Duot and Oshawott have the shell motif. I'd have loved to see this develop into some kind of fan dancer with big shells for fans. And it's they're still used like swords, but we go down the feminine route of it.
Oh yeah, no, I like that a lot. I like that idea a lot. We're fixing at this point. Go on.
We are, and the reason I'm fixing is because I still think Samurott's good. I think it's fine. I don't think the through line is great, But I think if of all the Gen 5 starters, it's the only final evolution I actually like.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think it's bad. I just don't think. I think it could have been better, but that's what good is. Good, it's not S or A tier. It's just there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Weirdly enough, I think the two Pokemon we've put in good so far had another chance at it, and as we've just said, I don't think Samurot's did anything with it.
No, I agree with you there. I actually think Hisuian Samurott is lower for reasons we'll go on to in a bit. Right, let's move on to Chestnut then, who is probably, from the circles I run in,
it's the most hated starter Pokemon.
It's the most hated starter Pokemon. And I don't think the hate it gets starts with Chestnut. I think the issue is it starts with Quilladin.
I agree.
Because I think that Quilladin sets up Chestnut to fail, which is a shame because I love Chespin's design. Yeah. Chespin feels like a proper Pokemon mascot. It's phenomenal. Chespin feels like it should have been introduced in a much earlier generation. But then, of course, we get Quilladin and then Chestnut. Now, there's, I have said this before, and I know other people have, that it looks more like a Digimon than a Pokemon.
I'll give you that.
Over-designed. Yeah, it's over-designed. I think that the annoying thing with this Pokemon is the one, it has spiky shield. They should have leaned more into into that with the design. I don't want to talk more about that because I don't want to fix it at this point. But honestly, I think this goes in the lowest tier. I think it goes into D tier.
Yeah, I'm not going to fight you on that.
Yeah.
I don't hate it, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend it's good.
No. Delphox. Delphox is a strange one. I go between hating it and loving its design. Just depends on what day of the week.
So here's the thing. We've said a couple of times now that, like, if the previous evolution is better, the final evolution suffers from it. And Braixen's even more popular within the Pokemon series. Like,
oh, is it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure in what was the fighting game? DX.
Oh, the
Pokemon tournament. I'm pretty sure you got Braixen instead of.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I'd have to look that up.
Because they know it's just a more popular Pokemon.
Okay.
So I think Delphox is very, very close to being a cool Pokemon. I think its skirt, its ear hair, it's just a little bit too hairy.
Yeah.
For my liking.
I think, and I agree. By the way, I did look it up. Braixen is in Pokken. It's not Delphox. You're absolutely right. That blows my mind. So I think that Delphox actually suffers from something that people have complained about with Pokemon for quite a long time. Is Pokemon starts on 4 legs, and then during the course of the evolution, most of them end up on 2 legs. Delphox is one of those Pokemon where I think it would have actually benefited it to stay on all 4 legs. And it's not many Pokemon I believe that for, but I just think it would work in terms of that. Stooped over, you've got the fire flowing from it. I don't know how you'd work in that magician element, because that's obviously
I have an idea.
For that kind of. Oh, okay, right. I think then. Oh, sorry. I was about to say, should we wax into one of the lower tiers so we can talk about it? But I actually don't think its design is weak enough to go into one. I think it's just good. I think it's in the middle of the road. Yeah. So what is your idea then?
My idea is that you get rid of the big ear hair, you put it on all 4s, you give it a big majestic tail, and you put a hat on it. Give it a witch's hat.
Oh yeah, I like that. Yeah.
And then you add a little bit of mystery. You got the one hat covering the eye. It's a little bit mysterious.
Yeah.
I really think if you put a witch's hat on it, Delphox is suddenly amazing.
Yeah, agreed. I think they should have leaned more heavily into that. They're obviously going for that kind of, witch style design. So just lean further into it. And I also think it shouldn't have been Fire Psychic. It should have been Fire Fairy. leaned in more on that mystical.
Yes.
I get why they went with psychic, but this is the generation that introduced fairy types. Here is a fire fairy starter.
Yeah, I think.
But I know why they didn't.
I could have even seen it being fairy, fire ghost.
Oh yeah. I mean, I know why they didn't do it because the Gen 6. I think Gen 6 is where we started to see the typings. The secondary typings all linked to the first typings in some way. So fire is strong against grass, which just started, whereas the secondary typings of the Gen 6 starters reversed. So, no, they didn't reverse, sorry. So for example, Greninja was out and out strong against Delphox because water and dark beat fire and psychic. Delphox is out and out better against Chestnut because fire and psychic beat grass fire, and so on and so forth. So they couldn't really change that psychic typing without having to upend that entire system. But yeah, Delphox, middle of the road, great Pokemon. Greninja, one of the highest ranking consistent Pokemon for players, people in the anime. People love Greninja. I know why people love Greninja. I think it's a strong design. I think, that whole, okay, how do you have a frog toad style design and have ninja elements, and you go with the long tongue and have that wrapped around it? Phenomenal. This for me is one of those rare rare later generation Pokemon that just slots into S tier and deserves that S tier.
Okay. I don't rate it quite as highly as everybody else. I think I still think it's great. I still think it's probably the best starter out of Gen 6. It's the one I choose. I think there's an argument that it should have had maybe the Frobbles instead of the tongue that are in Froakie and Frogadier's design. Other than that, I think it's great. I really do.
Yeah. So
similarly, as like late gen S tier Pokemon, I think Decidueye's up there.
Oh, Decidueye's gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. And again, has a follow through. I think that its middle form Dartrix probably just needs a little bit of something just to tie in between the two. But I think
it's a little bit frat boy to then become a mischievous archer that lives on the outside. Yeah, but
agreed.
It's got a strong design that it executes pretty much perfectly.
Yeah,
I think the signature moves lend to it as well, and they're very cool.
Yeah, I honestly, and I know this is probably going to annoy people that, this is someone's favorite Pokemon and we are glancing over it and just going, yeah, that's great, whack it into S tier, which I think it is. But that just shows just what a strong Pokemon it is. And it's the same for all those that we just like straight in. We know that it's going to the top. Is that they've obviously taken their time with the design. They've made sure that it fits in terms of, design, follow through with the evolutions, typings, moves, abilities. Like, it's just a perfect package. And there's a few Pokemon like that. So yeah, straight up there. So. Incineroar.
It's grown on me more over the years.
It has.
I still wish it hadn't stood up.
Yes, agreed. I think it'd be a stronger design if it was still on all fours like the previous evolutions. I actually prefer Torracat's design, and I wish they'd have leaned more heavily into that rather than what we got. Like, Torracat has this little bell thing going on, and I think that that could have almost erupted with flames on all, it's on all fours, and we could have got what probably Pyro should have been. It's a down facing lion, flames fanning out to create its kind of mane, and maybe it's all like it's physically top heavy, but that's why it's on all fours, because if it wasn't so top heavy, it would be on, up. So it's down because it's so top heavy. I think I've just come up with its alternative form that I would like to see personally,
which is fine because I think this still lands in good.
Yeah, agreed. Again, it's like it's grown on me over time.
What they went for, they executed well. I kind of wish they'd gone for something else. I think they could even maybe still go for that kind of dark wrestler vibe. But as you say, if something's a little bit more top heavy and is down on the ground and is more like prowling around and throws dirt in your eye and then takes you out, I could see it working really well and lends to that dark typing a little bit more.
Agreed. It's good. It could be better. Yeah. Like you say, if they'd have leaned more into... It feels like Incineroar is over-designed and the safe option. And I would have preferred them to go down a... Actually, let's, like you say, play a bit dirty.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, we got Primarina.
Talk about a follow-through that just fell off the end. It's a clown seal that somehow became this...
majestic sea creature.
That sings. I get it. It's supposed to be like what are they called? Sirens.
Yes.
And it's like, how do you get to a siren from a clown bouncing a ball on its nose? Stop it.
Yeah. But saying all that, I love its design. I love its typing. I think
its typing's great. I'm not strong on its design.
I am strong on its design, but only if you take out the first two evolutions. As it on its own, I think it's a really strong design. But I think, like you say, that follow through just is not there. But I don't think that is enough to drop it down past good. I think it's like Typhlosion.
So one of the issues I have with it is how overly feminine it is. Now, I know I talked earlier about, like, you lean more into the femininity with Delphox, but, like, adding a witch's hat is not putting a star and big, long, flowy hair. And this is coming from someone who has big, long, flowy hair, okay? So I just find it hard seeing this as a Pokemon that's 75% male. And, like, you be however you want, but it strays so far from what led up to it. It's got such a strong design I would have liked this not to be a starter Pokemon. There you go.
Yeah. No, agreed.
I could have seen this being a standalone Pokemon and Poplio evolve into something else.
Yeah. Agreed. And I think that one of my main criticisms of Pokemon is, and this is a terrible criticism to have because it's almost like, why are you doing the starters so well? Is the fact that when you, whatever starter you choose, fire, grass, water, how rare is it that you then, during your adventure, find another grass, fire, and water Pokemon that makes you go, want to box my starter? And the only time I can ever think of that happening is Generation 3, where I had Pokemon Sapphire, and I came across Kyogre, and I was like, oh, Swampert was my starter. Like, I've got to pick one. I can't have two water Pokemon. Primarina is my version of that for Generation 7. If I'd have chose Poplar and I was playing through the game, in alternative reality, you've got Primarina just in the wild, I think I'd box my water starter to have Primarina. It's such a strong design.
Yeah.
But as a starter, I don't think that follow-through is there that you've already mentioned. But I don't think that's enough to drop it out of good. I think good is where it naturally sits.
I think its typing carries it a lot. I think its typing and some of the moves it has carries it a lot.
Agreed.
Now we get into Gen 8. So Rillaboom, I think, is probably the strongest of these. And I'm going to show my hand really early on there.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, because my question was going to be, like, do you believe that the hate these Pokemon get is justified as starters?
I don't know how much hate they get. I know how I feel about them. And Rillaboom, to me, feels the most like a Pokemon of these three.
Yes, agreed. Yep.
I think it has the strongest through line of all of its evolutions. I think it's such a cool final form. It feels powerful. You feel kind of happy to land on it. And it's kind of, considering it's got the same level of bulk as Chestnut, it's nailed it a lot more because it's a big gorilla. It feels right.
Yeah.
I think it's an A. I don't think it tips into S.
And I know why it doesn't tip into S, and it's because the Thwacky has the sticks, but they can't lean into that with Rillaboom because it's got its Gigantamax form, which takes those design elements that should have been given to the final form evolution. Does that make sense?
I mean, it still has its drum that it pulls out to do its attacks.
Oh, it pulls out. Yeah, but it's not. Like, that should be featured in its design, even if it's as simple as it's got the drum under one arm. Like, something as simple as that.
Yeah, I see that.
I think that because they've had to hide some of its more unique design elements behind Gigantamax and its moves when it pulls out the drum, for example, and it's not on its design, it suffers for it. I think if they'd have implemented that, then it would be S tier, but because it hasn't got them, it can only go as high as A tier, in my opinion.
Cinderace. I like it. My issue with Cinderace is that it leans too heavily on its design influence. It's just a rabbit that plays football.
Yes, agreed. Oh, I am disappointed by this design because I love Scorbunny. Scorbunny, I think, is a phenomenal design. Raboot has grown on me, but again, suffers from that issue of Raboot is almost going down that like Greninja route of it's going to be a ninja style, and then suddenly goes into Raboot, which is bizarre. And I think that Raboot, like you say, that you can tell the influence is there, but it doesn't feel like Cinderace. Sorry, what did I say?
Raboot twice.
Raboot. Did I? Sorry, it's been a long day. Cinderace is one of those Pokemon where instead of them being subtle about the influence, they've decided to go whole hog in on the influence, and it suffers because of it.
Yeah, I think so.
And, you know, I think it would have been a lot stronger received if they'd have just scaled back some of those elements. But my issues with it, I don't think drops it out of... I could make an argument that it just sits in good.
I agree. I think it sits in good. I think it's still a fine Pokemon. Its design is still strong enough. And I kind of like where they go with the Gigantamax form. If it's just standing on a massive ball with big long ears.
Agreed.
I'm so here for that. And you know, its special move of kicking up the pebble and turning it into a Pyro Ball. Cool. Fine.
Right.
I just wish they pulled back a little bit.
Yeah. Agreed.
Inteleon.
What were they thinking?
They were thinking James Bond is what they were thinking, and it didn't work.
No, it didn't. So there are elements I like. Sorry, I say elements I like. The one element I like is the shooting the water out of its fingers. That's the only redeeming thing for it.
Do you know what? I like that in concept, but I hate the fact it's got these big bulbous fingers because of it.
It's a little bit weird.
It's got hands. It's got man hands. No,
it has.
Stop it.
Yeah, Inteleon is okay. You know what I think it is. You know, there are some of these Pokemon designs, and you know when we talk about they remind me of Digimon. I actually think about it. I think I've figured out what that is for me at least. It's the fact that some of these Pokemon I can imagine using human language, and this is one of them. That's what it is. It's the same with Cinderace. It's the same with Chestnut. I can see them talking to their, you know what, let's go on a Digi-destined adventure or something. And this is one of them. And Inteleon, for me, I could make an argument for it sitting in the not good tier, but I could also, you know what, actually.
I think I could make an argument for it being in D.
You know what? I've taught myself because I've given no redeeming features outside of I like the fact it shoots water out of its fingers. So yeah, whack that down into the bottom tier.
It's almost the opposite issue that I had with Emboar and Empoleon, who were too stocky for the design.
Yeah.
Inteleon's weirdly gangly.
Yeah.
And it just puts me off a little bit.
Yeah, agreed. Okay. So now we've got the Hisuian variant. So Hisuian the form of Decidueye.
Go on.
I've never known how I feel about this. I remember when I finally evolved it because when I was doing Legends Arceus, I avoided spoilers. So when I evolved this, I was shocked more than anything. And then I think I was disappointed.
Okay, interesting.
And I think the reason I was disappointed is the fact that we went for a grass fighting Pokemon, which opens up a slew of weaknesses, but also we've already had grass fighting Pokemon. And I just that was my criticisms. I think looking at it now, I can't say that is enough of a criticism to drop it right down. I think it is just a good tier for me, but I can understand why some people would probably make an argument for it being A tier.
I think I'd argue for it being A tier. I think it's still Decidueye at heart, but it's got enough of a design change, and the design change has strong influences that are clear throughout. You can clearly see this is a samurai style Decidueye. Yes. And I think within the lore of Legends Arceus, this is probably the strongest starter there. And weirdly enough, I really like what they did with his feet. I really like that it's got more talons than Decidueye has because it's a fighting type.
Yeah. Because Pokemon, as Game Freak, as they have created, new Pokemon and updated them over time, all their like dangerous body parts have become all roundy and cutesy, which I want them to move away from. So the fact that in this they went, if you're getting skewered by that, you're gonna hurt. So I like that part as well.
We'll go A. I don't think it's quite as strong as original Decidueye, but I think it's very good.
Agreed.
Typhlosion.
Yeah.
It's about I still think this is just good.
I think I prefer it over the original.
Yeah.
Mainly because they've gone for something unique in terms of Fire Ghost. It's got its little orbs that flames red, purple, and bringing out that tail a little bit. I think they could have gone further with this, which is why I'm hesitant to. Definitely not S tier. I think there's an argument for it to be made A tier, but I think as long as it's higher than ordinary Typhlosion, I'm happy. Like that.
So here's why I think it suffers. And it suffers because it was introduced in the 3D era, where Typhlosion was already made worse.
Yes.
Why, for the love of all that is Pokemon, did it not just have its flames constant?
I agree. Yeah.
Like, I remember when this game came out and the memes were about of just depressed Typhlosion. And that's all I see when I look at it.
Yeah.
He definitely listens to MCR on the weekend. That's fine.
Yeah. No, you are right. Now that I am actually looking at the in-game images of it without its fire, suddenly I'm not that happy about it. No, you are right. Without the fire, it just looks derpy and weird, and I don't like it. Oh,
I agree with you. It's higher than Typhlosion, but I don't think by much, really.
No. Okay. Yeah. Let's leave. I'm happy. Let's leave that there.
In a similar instance, this is right next to. Yeah, Hisuian Samurott is right next to Samurott. You'd argue below? That's what you said earlier.
No, I'd argue, but I've changed my mind. Now that I'm looking at it, I would argue that this is higher than Samurott. but not by much. I
No,
mean,
I
a bit
don't
of a
think- They had a chance to change stuff up and just didn't.
Yeah. No, other than literally all they've done is a palette swap, and then they've made certain parts of it more angular.
Yeah.
And that's about it. It's really disappointing where they could have gone with this, especially considering, like, it suffers from a little bit of the same issue as Incineroar. Lean more into that dark typing. Like, yeah, it's just a shame, really. And its size as well was really strange. I don't know if you've ever seen one of these in game.
It's tiny, isn't it?
Yeah. I remember throwing it out the first time thinking, oh, let's go. And I was like, what? Why is he down there? It's just weird. Just strange.
All right, finally onto the Scarlet and Violet Mons.
Okay.
Meowscarada.
Go on.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm interested to know your thoughts. Yeah, yeah.
It's okay. It's not where I wish they'd gone with it. They could have given us a grass saber-tooth tiger, and they didn't.
Yes.
Its magician angle, I don't think is executed the best. But I don't hate it.
I think I agree with you. This, you know what? Yeah, I think. Oh, I don't know. I could argue it goes in the A tier.
Oh, okay. Go on. I'll listen to an argument. I don't hate it, so go on.
No,
so you ain't got nothing.
No,
there's nothing that elevates it.
It was just my inner fairy coming out, loving it.
Yeah, it's fine. It's cool. Great.
Yeah, exactly. Let's whack it into B tier. I agree with you there.
Skeledirge.
So
Skeledirge hurts me a little bit.
Go on. Is it for the same reasons it hurts me? That it gets worse?
As it evolves, I think Fuecoco's amazing. Crocolore is an abomination. And then Skeledirge is like, I don't know how we got here. I don't know what you're meant to be. I don't know why you've got this flaming mustache coming out the side of you. Your snout is all over-designed.
Where's this
You've got a bird
come from?
The bird hatched from the egg that was on Crocolore's head, but like, I know there's some theories behind what it's supposed to represent, but it's kind of a mess.
Yeah, Skeledirge is a Pokemon that I think would work amazing in sprite format. If we were still in Pokemon sprites, I think this would look phenomenal. I think because it's a 3D model, it doesn't work very well. And you know what? For all the criticisms, I've had against Pokemon deciding to, Pokemon suddenly have to go stood up on 2 feet. This is one of the Pokemon I think, it probably would benefit. Not so much stood on 2 feet, but almost it's sat on its haunches because it's so bulky and heavy. So it's kind of that midway house. But I understand that they had to do something to differentiate it from the other, not frog Pokemon,
crocodiles,
crocodile
alligator Pokemon.
Yeah, in Feraligatr and Croconaw, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
They had to do something to differentiate which is, well, those two are both stood up. This one has to sit down.
It's a shame because it's probably the strongest starter. I think
in terms of
the
design.
No. In terms of gameplay, I think Fire Ghost is a great typing. I think Torch Song is an amazing move that just allows it to set itself up to be a sweeper. But its design really, it's lacking some form of like congruity to just be like, oh, I know what that is. I look at that and I see what it is. And it's also over-designed at the same time.
Agreed. So where are we putting this?
I think this is not good.
I agree. Yes,
yeah.
I agree. Yeah, it's grown on me. I'd love to know what our future me thinks in a couple of years' time about this Pokemon. But right now, and looking back to when I remember when I was doing a cage lock with British Eagle and he evolved that and we were recording together and it was just a moment of stunned silence of what's happened to Fuecoco, which was probably one of my top starter Pokemon in terms of design. Coco has such a strong design, and it's very rare that you have just a design that brings through its character, and it nailed that. And it's just interesting to see where they went with this. To wrap it up, we've got Quaquaval. Now,
I hate this Pokemon. I hate it.
I
hate it with a passion.
I like it in a weird way. I like it in a weird way. But I think for me, what I
go on.
So, to be fair, I am not going to argue that this is S or A tier. I could make a push for it to be good. However, I think I would bow down to people telling me that it's not good, because the things that I like about it are, one, it's typing, again, something that we haven't seen for starter Pokemon. Its Moxie hidden ability is really good. I love the fact that for a series where Pokemon just stand around for a lot of battle, it's quite good to have one that is constantly on the move. And I do like its tail fins as well. But I can understand people's hatred of this Pokemon.
No, it shakes its butt at me. I throw it out every time and it shakes its butt at me. And I hate its feet. And I know I'm realizing that I've mentioned feet quite a lot
A few
this
times,
episode.
yeah. So you want to tell us? Yeah.
No, I'm not. No, I mean, no. But it just it grosses me out. I really don't like it. I think. Do you know what it is? It's the Pokemon that draw attention to the feet. I think is what's distracted
We're
me.
back to the feet again. Okay, right.
We are. I think that's what puts me off them. Yeah, no, okay. I really don't like it.
Where are you putting this?
This is the worst starter Pokemon of all time for me. I actually hate it. I've never had a Pokemon that makes me feel so uncomfortable to be in the same room with.
But hold on, this has a bit of the same issue as Primarina. Like, I've got this up here. 87.5% of these are male. In what
no, that's
world
fine.
Is this
you want to be a big, fabulous dancer? Crack on. But do it over there. Time and a place, not every second of every day.
Okay, Conor, where are you whacking? Are you whacking this at the very bottom? If you want to, I'll let you. Go for it.
I would.
Okay, go for it.
I would.
Go for it. Okay. So,
I've never felt so passionately about something. Okay, we've been going for nearly 2 hours.
Yes.
I think the only way we can do this is just look at the garbage tier ones and go, right, how do we fix these?
I think so. I think you're absolutely right. But I think that we need to also take one of the fire Pokemon. And from that, we almost then have the trifecta of a water type, a fire type, and a grass type. So I think we just choose, rather than those 4 plus a fire, we just choose 3. So 1 grass, 1 water, 1 fire for Legends Arceus.
Okay, so we both disliked Inteleon. Although I vehemently dislike Quaquaval more, we both disliked Inteleon.
Okay.
I think
there's more you can do with Quaquaval, though.
Yeah, I agree.
I think let's choose Quaquaval.
Okay.
It's the water.
So we'll go Quaquaval.
Yeah.
It's got to be Chestnut, right?
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely agreed. Because Chestnut, I feel like there's a lot more you could do with that. I think they just fumbled that hard.
And then between Emboar and Skeledirge.
So, I think it's got to be Emboar. And the reason why, I think, is because, let's say Legends ZA is going to, in whatever world they're going to choose, oh, look at these people, they know the starters, they know who we're picking. There's no way they pick 2 starters from the same generation.
From the same region.
So I think you have to go with Emboar here.
So we're going to fix Emboar, Quaquaval, and Chestnut. I almost forgot its name again.
Let's start with Chestnut. Let's do grass, fire, water. Is it?
Grass, fire, water.
Yeah, I think that's the way we do this. So let's start with Chestnut. Okay? So we have to almost take a step back to think about Legends ZA, what region we're going to be in. So we're going to be in the Kalos region. which
Mhm.
opens up a whole avenue of questioning about Chestnut as to why its design will be different now rather than later. I think personally the way you go with this is time will have passed, which is why this Pokemon is now different in modern Kalos compared to Legend ZA. It's known as I've got it up here now, the spiny armor Pokemon. I see very little armor outside of a shell, and I see very little spines. Got a couple of points here and there. I think we lean more heavily of it being more of a tank. So this thing, doesn't hit hard. It doesn't move fast, but it is bulky as anything, and you lean more into that to the point where maybe it is so bulky, it's like top heavy, it's over, and maybe that's the way that you design it. Of in the past, its legs have always been like that, but it had more armor and stuff on the front, which is why it's down. And over time, it started to shed that, which is now why it stands up in the modern day. Let's go into more of this top heavy, bulky armor Pokemon and lean into that with its moveset and its ability of it can do things to bulk up, increase its defenses, and almost like seal itself off from attacks, such as like an armadillo. An armadillo like rolls over to protect itself.
Mhm.
I can see that being rolled into this design.
Yeah. I think you were maybe closer for me with your previous comment of we need to lean more into the spiky shield.
Yeah.
I could see this being a Pokemon that is notorious for its stalwart defender. It doesn't attack. It's not really an attacker, but it will hold the line. And it is, we got it the history of the Kalos region. It held the line and stuff like that. Just a wall of Chestnut just bringing the shield forward. And I like the idea of the shield being constantly on their arm and then just the spikes growing further out of it.
Yeah, I like that.
So maybe I like what you're saying about like the armadillo aspect of it. I think if you slim down the back design and bring it more up over the head, so it's like a helmet that flows into a kind of cape style.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
And then you have it with the shield so it stands in front of it, and then it suddenly looks like a big knight.
Yeah, and you know what? We have gotten Kalos. We've got Wickstrom, who is a knight. Like, you just kind of bring those two elements together of, in the past, this Pokemon was the de facto defender of, castles or whatever you want to do, which leans into your knight. You're moving it more towards a knight design. I think that makes a really strong design for this Pokemon all of a sudden.
Yeah. And as I say, like, it used to be more in like the wars, and it used to like be a strong defender back when it needed to. As time has moved on, it's been used more for Pokemon battles. It's become more of a fighter, so it's developed the fighting type. Back in the day, it was a steel type. It was a grass steel type.
Yeah. I like that a lot.
That armor was hard as steel and was almost impenetrable and had to be for the safety of Kalos.
Yeah, and I could see how you go, because in all likelihood, I'd imagine we're getting megas for whoever the Legends ZA starters are. I would be surprised if we don't. That kind of knight armor design just lends itself really nicely to, okay, how could you then elaborate that even more? And as a knight, you then have the ability to have like parts of its, like, faceplate snaps down. Its shield grows. Maybe it gets an additional shield. Like, there's a lot you can do with that design to amplify that grass steel knight armor style Pokemon.
Give it a lance. It mega evolves and gets a lance.
Gets a lance. I'd love that. I actually would love that. That'd be absolutely amazing. They could slide on the shield. It slides on the shield down.
Yeah. I like that a lot.
Okay. Let's move on to Emboar. So we kind of touched on this already in terms of, you mentioned it was over-designed. There was too much going on. I mentioned that I think that because it's fire fighting, it suffers from it. And I mentioned about it being fire rock. You mentioned about it being fire ground. And I'm just on it. I'm on Bulbapedia. Emboar, the mega fire pig Pokemon. Confirmed. We're getting a mega.
Okay.
We're doing it. We're getting a mega. Hit it here first. Yeah, I think this is one of those Pokemon that actually would benefit from you not seeing the entirety of it. So leaning in what you mentioned about ground type of it being partially submerged, a bit like Diglett.
Here's why I like the ground type as well, especially if you're going to put it in Kalos, is it's a truffle finder.
Okay, yeah.
So it's a pig Pokemon, it snuffles through the ground, it digs up the truffles, so it's got that ground element in there, and it's a fire Pokemon, so it can help you cook them too.
Oh, yeah, that works really nicely, actually. Yeah, I love that.
But yeah, I think it's still... You can still have it bulky. But do you lean down more at being like a gourmand kind of thing? Just
okay.
Like the French, it just loves good food.
Loves its food. Do you bulk out even more then? Is that what you're saying?
Like it's bulked out so much, it's like buried itself half in the ground.
Oh my god, you know what? I love that. I love that. I actually love it. That's so good.
It's sat down and just broke the ground beneath it.
Yeah, I love that. And and Pokemon isn't afraid to play in with some Pokemon being a bit bulky, like Snorlax, for example. Like we look at Snorlax for the majority of its life, it has either been lying down or I'm sure you've seen the meme of every generation Snorlax
it stands
slowly
up further, yeah.
stands up further. Like, could we see something the opposite with a regional variant of Ember as time has gone on? And you know what? Actually, you're absolutely right, because how would you explain that in lore? Well, the way I was gonna say, how would you explain? No, we're going backwards, because Kalos, as more shops open up, more delicacies open up, as more food becomes available, Ember then changes over time because of that. But then that doesn't explain how it then. You just do regional form, actually, don't you?
Yeah, this would be a regional form.
Yeah.
Within the Kalos region, there's more delicacies to enjoy, whereas in Unova, it's more focused on combat. Sure.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. There you go. That works. I think we've got a really nice design for that. Should we move on
Does
to
it still read Ember?
Go on.
That's the other question, though. Does it still read Ember?
What do you mean read Ember? Like,
as in, does a sort of fat pig still read as Ember? Have we strayed too much away from what Ember is?
No, I don't think we have. You can still have some of those elements, its design elements, because you... this is the problem with Ember's design, is I don't know what is Ember and what is clothing. It's a bit like Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee. It's an issue with that. So I would say that you go down the line of it suddenly becoming more overweight and ending up in the ground has fundamentally changed its design. I still think you can, no matter how much you change this, I think that, its face probably remains very similar. I think that's how the through line of, no, it's still Ember, it's just a regional version.
Yeah, this one's more of it's not kind of the wrestler that this one is. It's a sumo.
It's a
sumo wrestler.
Yeah, sumo, there you go, yeah.
Who are notorious for eating a lot and things like that.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I can just imagine Ember in a giant thong now.
Well, yeah, but that's it. So you remove the big belly band in that.
Yeah.
And you just keep maybe a black strip, or even you keep the big belly band and then you just have, you remove the trousers, you remove the armband.
Mm-hmm.
And
you know what? This is
you're losing most of that anyway because it's going to be in the ground, so it's fine.
Yeah. But I'm just thinking that I like the idea
legs sticking out the...
Yeah, I do quite like the idea of there are certain moves that it would have where it would actually stand up.
Yes.
And the first time that you see it in a thong is the first time it stands up and the camera pans around. You're like, what is going? Like, what is this? Like,
but I love the idea that it sticks its fists into the ground and then you just see its whole body just pivot. It's so top heavy. Yes. So you've still got these tiny little legs.
I'd shrink the legs down a little bit, personally.
A little bit,
it just doesn't get the use anymore. Yeah, okay, right. Nailed Ember. Quavel. So,
Change his
you know
feet.
what I've just realized? Sorry, all three of these are secondary fighting types.
Oh, they are, aren't they? Okay, so, but that's fine, because we've changed one to
Yeah.
grass steel. We've changed one to
Yeah.
fire ground.
Yeah. So
What are we
what
doing with
happens to
Quackwaffle?
you mentioned the feet, okay? You don't like
It's
the
got to
feet.
be
What
done.
we do
It's
with
got to
the
be
feet?
gone.
Okay, we get rid of the feet.
I don't know. Maybe just make him more duck feet, or just put shoes on him. If we're gonna have him be this like dancer, put shoes on him.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I can see that. Some like Cuban heels. Something like
Well,
that.
are we keeping it as a Cuban dancer? Are we keeping it as a? Because if we're changing its regional form, which effectively, because that's the thing. So Chestnut's weird because it's more like a Hisuian form of this is what they kind of were. They all were this, and then they evolved. I could very much see Embor being the original version, and our Embor being the Colosseum version that it's changed into this. What are we thinking with Quackwaffle then? Has it changed for the Kalos region? Or did it change for the Spanish region?
I think it's got to have changed for this region, but I can't explain why.
Yeah, I agree.
I think I'm thinking about whether because we've got Quaxwell, which is the previous form evolution, and we've got its big mane of hair. However, I'm wondering whether or not you could lean into that. You know what? It's sorry, just as an aside, Quaxwell's feet aren't actually that bad. It's
Yes,
actually kind of like it. Oh, okay.
I'm not giving up on this. I'm sorry.
No, apparently not. So I'm wondering whether or not we lean more into like that big, coif of hair that's got, isn't actually pompadour isn't actually hair. It's potentially it's got a larger brain, and therefore because it loses it when it evolves. So how about it has a larger brain and it's water psychic typing?
Okay, alternate for you. Because Quackwaffle stays the same. That's the other thing as well, is we've got to keep the previous two starters.
Agreed, yes.
So what's it called? Not Quackwaffle.
Quaxwell?
Quaxwell. Quaxwell stays the same.
Yeah.
So we've got this kind of like, so I'm thinking it's a Pokemon that focuses a lot more on its hair, it slicks it back. Why don't we go down a greaser angle with it?
Oh, okay.
We just take Quackwaffle, this flamboyant, really out there duck, and just make it like a biker gang thug.
I'm thinking like Grease style. Like it's got a comb as a weapon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just keeps a comb on its back or something, like an oversized comb or something ridiculous like that. Oh, okay. Because I'm thinking about like moves, like you could give it mirror shot because it's always looking in the mirror.
Yeah, and I like it, and it can still like move constantly, but it's just like popping its collar, or just snapping its fingers. Just Jetson the Sharks, just snapping its fingers as it comes at you.
I'm actually loving that design, and you could like build that into the lore of why is its color so different? Well, its color so different because it uses naturally occurring berries to dye its feathers. They could throw that in there to explain the color change, and therefore you wouldn't need to give it, any kind of actual leather jacket or anything. You just have the feathers are styled in such a way that it emulates that.
Yeah, I mean, it's already shown that like Quaxley and that have an oil that their feathers give off, and that's what allows them to slick it back and stick it in whatever form they want. So yeah, I could see you have this kind of, as I say, this chest feathers that they put into a big popped collar, and sort of those tail feathers come down into like a not quite trench coat look, but something similar that's hanging down the side.
Yeah.
And then you change the feet into those like boots. They're more like boots. So you bring them closer together. You have the one at the back stand up, and they're darker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about typing?
Water dark.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I think just there's an argument to be made water poison, I think. But
yeah, there's an argument for that.
try
I mean, you could definitely say like it's something to do with the oil. The slickness of its oil has become like a literal oil slick.
Yeah. Oh, I like that a lot. Ooh,
You know, and that
okay.
also explains the color.
Yeah.
And you can even tie it into the game. You say like, oh well, it's to do with the production and the development of the city that Quaxwell have started evolving this way. That they've started getting this oil over their feathers.
I like that.
I like
that a
water
lot.
poison. That'd be fun.
Yeah, exactly. Something a little bit, because I don't think we've had a water poison yet. We've had a couple of water darks. We had water poison. We haven't had fire ground, have we? No. And we haven't had grass steel. So all new typings as well. Oh, I love that. I'm a bit gutted we didn't, because I want to wrap this up because we've been going for over 2 hours. I knew this was going to be a long one. I'm a little bit gutted that we didn't get to look at Feraligatr, Meganium, and Empoleon, but maybe that's one for another time.
Yeah, if you want to see this again, let us know.
Yeah, definitely. If you want to see us do other tier lists as well, let us know, because they're always fun to have those discussions and speculation and just talk about how we would change things. Anything else you want to add before I wrap up this episode?
No, I think we nailed that, honestly.
I think I had an absolute blast doing that. And that's the show for this week. If you've gotten this far, you're just top dollar, aren't you? Before you go, we'd really appreciate it if you could leave a review on the podcast platform of your choice. If you're watching on YouTube, then please leave a like and subscribe, as it really helps out our podcast. If you've got a comment or question, you can reach us by leaving a comment on our podcast on YouTube, by emailing goldenrodpod@gmail.com, by leaving it on our Discord channel, or by using the hashtag goldenrodpod on Twitter. Conor, where can we find you?
You can find me on my YouTube channel, The Captain Fidget, or on Twitter @CapFidget.
I'm Ben. You can find me as Professor Hoenn Gaming on YouTube and Professor Hoenn on Twitter. We'll be back next Friday for another week of Pokemon podcast content.
See ya!